Good evening, Rick. Would you believe it's Dr. Doom?
What's on your evil mind?
Hold your insulting tongue and mark my words well.
How about this rumor that you are really hired, Mr. Stark?
And welcome to another exciting episode of the KLIQ Nation's Comic Book Chronicles.
Yay!
And I'm joined by the man with the sound effects who's still doing the screen share. You need to turn that off so everybody can see you.
I am.
Oh, there he is, Agent underscore 70, everybody.
Yeah! There is a reason why we diversify, we divide labor around here with 4 co-hosts, because when you got the soundboard, the opening video, you're just clicking all over the place.
Yeah, it gets a little tricky. I, of course, am at PCN underscore Dirt from the Pop Culture Network, Dirt here, and we are not joined by Tim Dog, Tim DOGG 98 on Twitter. He actually had a baby. Well, actually, I guess his wife had the baby, but his family had a baby. And was it Sunday night, I think?
I think so.
Yeah, Sunday night at like 10 p.m. I know it's Xavier. Xavier, I can't think of the middle name. I just blanked. I know it's Xavier. I remember that.
I forgot. But like I said, shout out to Mrs. Dog 98.
Is that her official Twitter handle?
No.
At Mrs. Dog 98.
I'm not 100% sure what her Twitter handle is.
We'll have to check. Actually, check right now and register before someone else does. Also, Roddy Cat is not with us at the moment. He said he'd be running late. He was he checking out a movie, I think?
I believe so. I believe
some like shirking his duties to go see another movie.
I know, it's not even an opening night, I don't believe.
What people? I got to tell you, man, people. Of course, I won't be here next week. I'll be on vacation myself. I'll be at Kings Island in Ohio. But so yeah, everybody's taking some time off and traveling, and it's summertime and crazy schedule stuff going on. But hey, you're here, and because you're here, we're happy to be here. So thanks for tuning in tonight. Don't forget, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Stitcher. You can find us in iTunes. You can find us in the Google Play Store. You can find us on TuneIn Radio. I think iHeartRadio, SoundCloud. I think there's an AOL chat room. I think on Genie. Prodigy. I think there's a Prodigy room you can find. AOL keyword KLIQ Nation. But don't forget, you can tweet at us at CBCron or hashtag CBCron or hashtag KLIQ Nation or hashtag Comic Book Chronicles, or any of those things really will work. I mean, they'll find us one way or another. So don't get too upset if you don't know exactly. If you can't think of the exact one, just kind of search around to what you think sounds kind of familiar, because more than likely it will somehow find its way back to us.
Righto.
So, all right. One thing we didn't talk about before we started, Agent 70, and that is what book we want to talk about first. Usually we plan this out in advance.
Right.
So when the show starts, we can just roll right into it and look all smooth and professional.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're scrambling to try to figure out how to get things to start correctly.
Yeah, you and me are not the ones for being professional here.
Oh,
I'm gonna put a hat on, cover up my bald spot. There we go.
Oh, I disagree with that. So, we were discussing books though, and I don't know how many books you read this week.
I read 3.
That came out.
There's 3 that are actually from this week.
Right. So I know that the one book we definitely both read in common was Doctor Strange number 390, which is the swan song for Donny Cates on the Doctor Strange book.
And I am so sad because I just realized with the whole Damnation storyline that I was like, oh, Donny Cates, this name sounds familiar. Oh, that's the guy who was writing Thanos. I
Exactly.
loved Thanos when he took over on that. I thought that was fantastic. He was writing Damnation. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I love this. So there's a new Doctor Strange. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to pick that up. Doctor Strange. Donny Cates is writing it. This is fantastic. This is his last issue.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep. And what's funny is that this is definitely a fitting end to his run on this book, because there have been a lot of fairly epic storylines in this book since Cates took over in the wake of Jason Aaron's run on Doctor Strange. And as I was saying to Dirt off air, I definitely remember, if we pulled the YouTube archives, I believe Tim Dog and myself were not so keen on seeing Jason Aaron go from Doctor Strange and seeing Donny Cates hop on. We knew Donny Cates; we've had him on the show, but we weren't sure what direction he would go in. But we definitely, as you can plainly tell from our glowing reviews of the Doctor Strange run that he's had, we've definitely been pleased and very much happy with what he's done.
Well, and the thing is, like, now that I know he had this run on Doctor Strange, I'm going to go back and read it. Because I'm the one guy. I'm not a huge fan of Jason Aaron. It's like, take it or leave it. Just kind of depends on what the storyline is.
Sure.
But in the past, month or so, I've been actually going through, like, what do I have that Donny Cates wrote, and like, what else has he done? I've started reading stuff. I love his sense of humor. And he's done a lot of stuff that's really funny and really amusing, for me. So now, like, having read this particular issue, which I just kind of picked up, as a lark, really,
right.
This was great. Like, this is one of the best things. And the artwork in this book, who's the artist?
It's Fraser Irving.
Fraser Irving. Man, the facials.
Yes,
that this guy does is hilarious.
There's one that was a little off. I gotta call him on this. There's one that was a little off, and well, let's talk about the story, and we'll get actually the facial expression that I was not happy with, which is, without spoiling everything that has happened in this run since PCN_Dirt's not all that familiar with it. Doctor Strange has had some serious ups and downs in Cates' run, and he had a falling out with someone who's become a romantic interest that was introduced during Aaron's run. That is Zelma Stanton. And basically we're dealing with the aftermath of a lot of the stuff that's happening in Las Vegas with Damnation, and the stories that were happening just immediately prior in the Doctor Strange book itself. So we're sort of dealing with like how those stories, how Zelma and Doctor Strange's story gets wrapped up, and lo and behold, a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man shows up and mucks up the works, and it's just hysterical. But there's one facial expression for Peter Parker that I'm looking at. I'm just like, that's not a real expression. That does not happen in real life.
Okay, wait. I want to know, because I'm afraid the one that you're saying you don't like is the one that
you probably love. Yeah.
And that's going to be this one right here. See, this to me like sold me on it once I saw that, because he shows up. I guess Doctor Strange is like running a veterinary clinic now.
That was it. That was a subplot.
Yeah. Okay, so Peter Parker shows up at the vet clinic and he has an actual spider, and so he's like, well, I heard about the whole veterinarian thing where you do a thing where you're like, well, there's a spell where you, and Doctor Strange is like, do you want to talk to a spider, Peter? And Peter just gives him that face. And then it's just like, yeah, I'd like to talk to a spider. And so then we have this nice 2-page like Saturday morning cartoon spread of Peter Parker and an actual spider having this conversation.
Right. Chip Zdarsky chips in on art on that, and it's hysterical.
And this is a facial hair bros is what this is. Did you hate the facial hair bros, or were you?
I sort of.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm thinking here. Come on now, that was brilliant with facial hair bros, and this right here, this whole thing with Spider-Man was just phenomenal.
Well, the way it wraps, the way this little kind of mini story wraps up, where Spidey is literally talking to the spider, and it just wraps. It ends on such a down note. It's so funny. That,
and I'm gonna throw out a deep cut here, a dank. This spider, the way it's drawn
Mhm.
by Chip Zdarsky. It looks like MCP Pants from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. If anyone remembers MCP Pants, he was a giant spider trying to he's trying to sell diet pills in a global pyramid scheme to get people to be overactive, to run his drills, to bore into hell so he can release demons to take over the world. Yes, that was the storyline.
Good night, everybody.
And that's who they've tapped into. I mean, that the spider looks like he's just missing a giant diaper. So,
oh, goodness.
And yes, the giant diaper on the spider was part of MCP Pants. So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this book, this is, I don't, where's Donny Cates going after this? Like, I know they're throwing everybody around, they're mixing everything up. Do we know what book he's doing coming up?
I believe so. I believe it's actually a pretty big it's a pretty big assignment, if I'm not mistaken. It probably just like was on my mind earlier, and now we're both going to consult Google.
Yeah, and I'm typing it in right now. See what I can find here.
And see what he's going to be working on.
Let's see, doing something. Donny Cates at Marvel.
He's on Venom now.
Well, yeah, and I did like Venom. And his Venom will include Miles Morales. Ooh,
apparently so.
Interesting. What else? What else is he doing? Because yeah, I mean, like, I'm gonna just start looking through stuff whenever his name pops up. Like, I'll go into the retailer services,
right,
and start searching through and find whatever he's got coming out next, and whatever it is, I'm signing up. Oh, well, Cosmic Ghost Rider, we know is coming out. That's a spinoff from Thanos. And Death of Inhumans.
I guess so. I guess so. He's definitely busy, I know. So,
all right. So, Death of Inhumans, that's going to be a thing going on for a while, it looks like.
Yeah, Cosmic Ghost Rider. I forgot about that. That's funny.
So, all right.
But anyway.
So, yeah. So, definitely, like I said, now I'm going to have to go back and find those Doctor Strange issues and read through them. And I may even go full paper copy on those.
Nice. I definitely
Because
have full paper copy on these. So, but, I can tell you that it's definitely an interesting read. There's, some Asgardian stuff involved in this. You may have been, we may have rescheduled the show back to Thursdays, and you may have started to hear some reviews about that story arc. When Loki was involved. So, I don't know how much of that you might remember, but anyway, this was a lot of fun. Spider-Man is used to great comic effect, and this is already, we led off with a potential Click of the Week candidate. So,
all right. So, what do you got next?
All right. So let me hit a couple of books. I'm surprised you didn't get to one of the big number ones this week, which was Black Panther #1.
I've not been reading Black Panther.
Ah, okay. So just very quickly, without spoiling too much, Ta-Nehisi Coates has started a new volume of Black Panther, wherein we draw upon some of the stuff. I believe it was in Marvel Legacy, where we saw a hint of a Wakandan colony in space. And I think this is drawing upon the, I guess the idea that vibranium was a meteor, and there is, more vibranium out there somewhere, and this is where they send Wakandans, and the story kind of flows naturally from there, and how these Wakandans kind of develop, evolve, and deal with the other spacefaring races in the Marvel U.
So they've been in space for a while already?
Yeah, this story seems to be set in the future, or at least in the near future. So it's not completely clear. I may have to do a little bit more of the reading of the. Actually, wait, it's right there on the front page. 2,000 years ago. Yeah, so this is going back a while.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
This is going back a while. So that's the gist of it, without spoiling too much.
So for 2,000 years, they've been up in space, and yet no time in the last 2,000 years has anyone from Earth ever bumped into them at any time anywhere out in space?
I think they were further out, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Or they're, space is vast, and who knows how far vibranium actually traveled before it actually impacted the Earth, right?
I don't know. You'd think there'd be a Nova or somebody who'd be on top of that.
Listen, part of the Shi'ar Empire or something, So anyway, another book that we're talking about the.
Wait. Before we move on, though, let's just ask then. Considering this is not necessarily a reboot of the franchise, but it is kind of like a season 2, so to speak, where things shift gears. Does it still feel like it's connected, or does it feel like it's pretty much a clean break from the last series? I mean, being in space sounds completely different. So does this feel like it's a completely different thing?
It does feel connected because at least there's hints of connectivity with the ending of the previous volume, with familiar faces which may or may not be the same. That's the kicker. We're not 100% sure yet.
Okay.
So it does feel like it's connected, but it definitely does. It also is definitely a break and a new season which seems like a new setting, almost seems like new showrunners. If you were going to use the TV comparison, it almost feels like there's new showrunners, but it's the same writer.
Okay.
All right. I was going to ask about, did you read No Justice number 3?
I did read No Justice number 3.
See, we had a couple books in common this week. So, tell me about they're lighting Christmas trees. No, I mean they're lighting because that's what I'm like. They're doing what? They're lighting trees.
Well, and it's weird because they're like restarting them, like they're an engine.
Yeah, but
so
they're trees.
They have to jumpstart these magical trees on a technology planet. Yeah. Okay, so this I will admit, I liked this issue better than the last one because this one at least felt like
they were doing something.
Yeah, we got some progress going forward, and we did get some interesting standoffs, and we know we now feel like there's I don't want to say like a countdown, but there's definitely like something pressing down on them. Like now we have to get to action. Like before it was just like, okay, there's this threat. It's big stuff. It's out there, whatever. We got to take care of it. And now it's like, okay, time is now running out.
Agreed.
Like, time to get serious and jump in there.
Agreed.
So I at least appreciate it for that, but it's still one of those things where I'm getting to the end of it and I'm still kind of going like, okay, so I just read this whole thing and I'm not 100% sure. I'm like maybe 75, 80% sure of what's going on in this story, but there's a lot that it just feels like it just leaps.
Yeah.
Like it just says, oh, there's a seed. And then they just kind of move on, and you're just supposed to be like, "Oh yeah, okay. Well, the seed's important, sure, right." And it really doesn't seem like it explains a lot of the stuff really well. So you just have to just buy into it. You either buy into it or you don't.
Right. And they try to make the villains useful. There's an exchange between Harley Quinn and Cyborg. You have to think out of the box.
I hate Harley Quinn. I am not a fan.
And it's like, you're right, I can do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, come on. Why don't you just plug the tree in and it'll light up? I mean, I'm sorry.
And the other thing is the art felt a little inconsistent through this book.
Right. It's split up between two artists.
And it was enough that it stood out. And there were a couple places where the faces just looked kind of weird.
Yeah, cartoon.
Yeah. It was like over manga'd a bit.
Yeah.
And then you get to this other style, and this other style is just kind of a clean, basic, standard
hero. Yeah.
And I think I probably enjoyed that part more when the art changed.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I recognized one named Marcus Toe, and I think Marcus Toe has a pretty standard superhero style. And it might be the other artist, Rossmo, who, and if we Google him, we will see what his art style is, and that's probably the jarring difference between the two.
Yeah. And it still felt like it was a little too dialogue heavy, where there's a lot of words being said and very little actually being communicated. throughout this book.
But isn't this a short miniseries, like a 4-issue miniseries? Like it's
yeah, this ends next month
Right.
or 2 weeks or whatever when it comes out.
So they're using all that exposition and word balloons to explain why on earth we're supposed to care about lighting trees. And I kind of felt like bogged down trying to figure out what they're doing too.
And the other thing is, it feels like the trees are really a MacGuffin. Like they're just kind of there as a way, like this is what you focus on because here's this tree of wonder and you got to do something with this tree of wonder. But the actual tree of wonder and its story and its history and whatever it actually does doesn't really matter. Right. It's only there because that's what the Omega Celestials, whatever they're called.
What are they?
That's what they're, coming after. So
yeah.
The what are they? I know they're the Omega.
I'm looking.
Yeah, I don't know. This and Avengers at the same time really causes a problem.
Yeah, seriously. Omega Titans.
Omega Titans. There we go.
Oh, gosh.
Which is a really bad name for the villains because I'm thinking we've got the Teen Titans, the Titans, and the Omega Titans.
Right.
And one of those is a villain team.
Right. And then there's always the Titans of Myth, if they ever have to deal with the Olympians, right?
Right.
So, Titans.
So, like I said, I still enjoyed it more than last issue because, like I said, it does feel like it's now pushing the story towards something, but I'm still not 100% sold on this series.
What I was going to say is, you've heard my spiel on this, and I think you probably have similar feelings. The reason why, as kids, we picked up books like Justice League or Avengers was so that we would be able to see, multiple heroes working together on a, as a team. As opposed to kind of having to pick up like 3 or 4 individual books, right?
Right.
And if you're looking for that, if you're looking for your fix, you can still get it here, but it's just not that convincing a story right now. Maybe it'll read better, as a collected set. I don't know. But it seems like it's a little too all over. It's a little bit, forget contrived. We already know it's contrived, but it's just
but the problem is it feels like it's contrived, and there's a difference between. I mean, obviously, a writer structures a story and puts it together,
right?
But it should feel like an organic flow from some other stuff that's happening in the DC universe, and as the characters work their way through it, it should feel like they're in this event, but they're all true to themselves as they work through it. And this feels so much more like cutscenes in a video game.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of thrown together and you get some dialogue just to move to something else that they have to bash or they have to light or they have to set on fire or whatever it is with these things.
Agreed. Although it was nice, spoiler alert, I'm going to ring the bell because this is this week's book. It was kind of cool to see what Starro did.
Oh, yeah.
Like you don't realize that Starro is speaking like a punk. I'm like, has Starro always been, characterized that way?
Well, from what I remember, there's actually like a race of those things. And so the Starro you get is not always the Starro that was there before. Like every so often they lash out, but I think they all just have the same name because that's what their race is, whatever.
Conquerors, okay.
Maybe. I don't like, and again, this is New 52 and everything, so who knows what's different this time around. But yeah, I think there's been more than one mind controlling starfish attacking Earth in the past.
Okay. All right. Well, interestingly enough, I like the maneuver and I like the dialogue that Starro has, and that's what was jarring to me. I thought, has Starro always been, characterized like this? Have I not been, reading this? I don't know if I've ever read an issue where I read Starro's dialogue, or if I always thought that he talked like Shumagorath in the Marvel Comics, Marvel vs. Capcom games,
Yeah, I think he's usually much more of a megalomaniac type of voice, whereas this is much more, like you said, a punk. This is more of just a kid with an attitude and a YouTube channel.
Sure. So. All right. What's your third book? Unless you want me to go through like the other ones.
No. Okay. So the last one I have is Flash 47.
Okay.
And I was actually, it's funny because the store where I used to work, I was in there talking to the owner the other day, and we were talking about a lot of the books on the stands, and he was talking about Flash and how a year ago Flash was like a hot selling book. And nowadays it isn't, and it's really dropped off kind of dramatically. And he said that, and immediately that made sense to me because of what's happening right now in the book. Flash is so interwoven with its own mythology right now. Okay. If you have not at least been somewhat familiar with the Flash books since the post-crisis on Infinite Earths, then there's a lot of stuff you're missing.
Okay.
Because this goes back to pre-Flashpoint, to pre-Zero Hour, to back in 86, 87 stuff that was going on. And it's talking about stuff that happened in 93, and it's talking about stuff that happened 10 years ago. And everything's interwoven and intermixed. And Wally West from the old timeline, the old universe, the old DC Comics publishing lineup, he has returned, and he's remembering things from before, which makes it really interesting if you've read all this stuff.
Right.
But if you're someone who's never really gotten into Flash before, or you just know him from the movies or the cartoon.
Yeah, when Wally was a Titan, you remember Linda Park, you remember Impulse and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, and even Impulse, and I think there's a statue of Johnny Quick that they show off at one point, and some of these other characters. So if you're not familiar with Flash, pretty deeply, then you have really no idea what's going on. But if you are a gigantic nerd, like some of us are, and you are familiar with all this stuff, it's great. Okay. So it's really it's the worst for bringing in new readers, and it's a terrible jumping on point. There's really no point in the last year or so. Like if you tried to jump on with the button, you were probably okay for a couple months, but then it just started getting so much deeper into this stuff that you probably just couldn't follow it. So it's
I remember the last issue of Flash that I read, at least in the regular ongoing, he was dealing with like the reverse Speed Force or something like that, or the Dark Speed Force.
Right. Yeah. That was a couple months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gotten worse since then.
It's gotten it's gotten denser since then.
I understand.
It's gotten deeper since then. So, there really is I went to a comic show this weekend. There was a small local comic buying, selling, trading show going on. And I was digging through boxes of old back issues, and there's an old Flash, I think it was Flash Quarterly from 1994, 95, where you see the whole Speed Force family, running up the side of a building. And I was looking at it going, this ties into what's being read or what's going on in Flash right now. And if you haven't read this, it kind of hurts your ability to understand what's going on in Flash, because it is so deep and so dense with all the mythology. So again, rewarding if you've read all that stuff,
right?
But if you're not familiar, this is the absolute worst time to try to be reading Flash.
Gotcha.
So I am hoping, as much as I like it, I'm hoping that it wraps up fairly quickly, and then it can go back to getting into a point where a new reader could come in and pick it up and be comfortable.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to rapid fire through the rest of my books so that we can get to Clicks of the Week.
Okay.
So I'm going to spin up the Vulcan. All righty. So first up is Champions number 20. This book is a little bit off schedule because it took me a second to figure out what had happened in the last issue. So it's like a week or two late, but ultimately we pick up right where we left off with the Champions in the Arctic, dealing with disturbance in the polar ice caps, and they're surprised to see the Master of the World, I believe his name is, one of those kind of corny named super villains up there, and it seems like he's actually on the force. He's actually on the side of the Angels this time, where he's trying to. He alleges that he's trying to save the polar ice caps and the permafrost and the ice shelf. But obviously that it's not, everything is not as it seems, and we have it to be continued, and possibly have a new character being introduced, new hero being introduced through these pages, through the story arc. Let's see, Incredible Hulk number 717. This is the final issue of World War Hulk 2. It is pretty much the final issue of Amadeus Cho as the totally awesome Hulk. basically we resolve the issues of the dark Hulk side of Amadeus's personality taking over. Amadeus ultimately wins out, and we have a new status quo for Amadeus, because what's teased in upcoming solicits for champions and what we find at the end of this Incredible Hulk issue is, spoiler alert, kind of a Hulk light. It's a totally awesome Hulk light. He's slimmed down. We have not, we obviously don't know what the extent of the slimming down will have on, his strength level and whatnot. But, we'll see in future issues of Champions. Invincible Iron Man number 600. So this issue is all over the freaking place. It's Bendis's last issue on Invincible Iron Man, and he strangely enough, and that's a pun that's really intended. If you've seen some of the articles, Dirt, about the book.
No, huh?
Okay, so were you intending to read this?
No.
Okay, so I'll spoil it. The hell. So it's online, right? So ultimately, like I said, the issue is a little all over the place. While Bendis is sort of wrapping up the most recent storyline involving the biological parents of Tony Stark, also dealing with some of the developments involving one. I'll ring the spoiler bell for this part. Some developments regarding one Leonardo da Vinci. Speaking of S.H.I.E.L.D., the last issue of which I did not read this week, and I'm kind of kicking myself, but it looks dense as hell, so I'm gonna have to sit down and give some dedicated time to it. 7 years in the making here, people, from Hickman and Dustin Weaver. But anyway, speaking of Leonardo da Vinci, he plays a role in this issue, Invincible Iron Man number 600, and there's a setup here for the status quo, the new status quo for Ironheart / Riri Williams and one Miles Morales. Interestingly enough, that's also set up here. So when I said this book was all over the place, I meant it. It definitely is Bendis's kind of going away party, where he wraps up a couple things and also opens up one particular path, which is I rang the spoiler bell already, so you're forewarned, which is Tony Stark as Sorcerer Supreme,
which was something that was in the infamous Iron Man Dr. Doom book. Yeah.
There you go. So that is something that is touched upon at the very end of this issue. So that is Bendis leaving kind of a parting gift for the incoming creative teams. And finally, let's see here. X-Men Gold number 5. This is, strangely enough, a fun read for X-Men Gold. X-Men Gold has been kind of dragging lately because it's working under the weight of the wedding between Colossus and Kitty Pryde. But this issue read a lot like a classic Uncanny X-Men story. There's plenty of action. There's plenty of anti-mutant hate and hysteria going on. There's lots of modernized Sentinels going on. And believe it or not, just as predicted by one at TimDog98, the legacy virus may become a factor in the very near future. So this is actually a pretty entertaining issue. If you're looking to pick up any X-Men book, I definitely recommend Red, but Gold is second in that regard.
And Blue is a distant third.
Distant third. So that is that for my books. Let's see if Tim Dog or Roddy put anything onto the sheet, and they have not. Oh, well, Roddy obviously did. So let's go through Roddy's books real quick. He had thoughts on Doctor Strange number 390. He liked it, and he liked Bats and Spider-Man's interaction. It's probably worth the click of the week alone. He also said there's some weird looking but fun art in this issue. I bet you he was looking at that same panel.
And I'm telling you, that panel is gold.
So, and he liked that it was a touching send-off for the creative team. He also thought about Black Panther #1. He was first thinking Die Hard with a bit of Black Bolt. He's curious to see where this goes. Star Wars Annual #4. Pod racing with a Skywalker at the helm. A set of Sith lightsabers and Vader involvement equal a sign of Staros and Luke team up. Not really. And clearly this will come up again. Again, with the Star stuff, Star Trek, the Next Generation through the Mirror #4, the Mirror Universe Picard's plan is revealed. 2 universes collide. Meanwhile, months earlier, Mirror Universe Data gathers the seed for said plan. And finally, Roddy left a note about Skyward #2. To help her father, Willa goes down to the streets and gets in a little over her head and leads it back to her father. So, it seems like Roddy may have left a hint of what his click of the week might be, although he did not put one into the sheet. So I guess we're at clicks of the week time. Here it comes. PCN_dirt. What is your pick for a click of the week?
Well, considering, I have only a few choices to pick from, it's actually pretty easy for me to pick, and that's got to be Doctor Strange.
I second that.
That was the most fantastic thing that I've read. And it's actually one of those things, it's like, we talked about it, and now I want to read it again.
Yes. Yeah. And reading Roddy Cat's notes on it made me want to read it again, too. So I second that. I hesitate to throw Roddy's choice in there. We'll let him put that in and maybe tweet that out later on. Same thing with Tim Dog. He hasn't updated for this week, but those are our clicks of the week. So I guess I'm gonna I guess I can bid adieu to PCN_dirt and read our first ad. I'm going to rapid fire the news.
Okay. Well, then, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Take it easy,
Dirt. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yep. So enjoy the vacation time. Enjoy getting away from it all for a little while at least.
And shout out to Columbus Crew. I'll be seeing you guys taking on Toronto.
All right. With the sports ball. Take it easy, Dirt.